Okay, so good morning, everybody. I guess we do see that there's a wide range of participants around the world. So welcome and thank you for attending a CyberProof webinar, upgrading your SOC from log collection to true threat detection and response. And today we're joined and very happy to welcome Iftekhar Hussain, who is someone who is works out of the Indian operation at Microsoft. He is a global security black belt, so no messing with Ifti. And Aman Malhotra, who is the CyberProof cybersecurity architect. So welcome. We're really pleased to have you here on this webinar today, and I really hope that we'll get to investigate some interesting topics, particularly around essentially what we're seeing in many regions, which is that security operation teams are increasingly needing to extend the threat visibility into cloud. But often they're just not able to go beyond simple log protection. So what we're going to do is we're going to, 1 second, just I'm going to move. Okay, we're going to move to the next slide, and essentially we're going to basically define the industry context, define how we optimize cloud security operations, and we have some examples of use cases. Then we'll also talk about the real benefits and of leveraging the Microsoft Sentinel SIM, which is a cloud native analytics automation and hunting tool, and then essentially how you wrap that into kind of a service and an operation. Finally, we'll talk about some of the realities. We actually have a case study which is going to address hybrid model, where often organizations still have elements of their on-premises operations, but are shifting into the cloud. So just one more piece of housekeeping. Firstly, the session is recorded. So if you, for some reason, you do get cut off or you're not able to stay for the whole time, you will receive a recorded version of the entire session. So you know, note that in case anything untoward happens with the connection. Secondly, we've uploaded some resources and also some links in the attachments area of the BrightTalk UI. So please feel free to download and to take advantage of the additional resources provided both by Microsoft and CyberProof. And finally, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat, the question mark on the right-hand side, the question mark icon. Ask us any questions and we will do our best to address them. So just moving forward, just to set some context, I think there's almost not a day that goes past when there isn't some kind of breach. But we are increasingly seeing cloud becoming part of the conversation. And just to give a cross section of some reports that we've seen over the months. One saying that 98% of organizations have experienced some kind of cloud security-based hack in the last 18 months. The average cost of remediating or reconfiguring is really skyrocketing. So it's all very well to be moving into the cloud and enjoying the benefits of the cloud, but if you're leaving gaps, security gaps, and basically not managing that process, it could be a very costly endeavor. And just in general, we are seeing a large increase in cloud-based attacks, particularly in the recent period. The date isn't right here on the last item, but I think it just gives a good feeling of where we are and why this discussion is so important. And I hope that our subject matter experts will be able to set the scene and also answer your questions. So basically I think this is where we start comparing kind of an on-prem to a cloud based model, and kind of have an understanding of that migration. So I think what we'll do is we'll pass over to Aman. Are you going to take us away on from the next few slides here?
Sure. Thanks, Howard. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, in whichever part of the world. So, just just before I get into this topic, just setting the context and building over what Howard said. So, when we speak to a lot of organizations, we do you can say we do note down their feedback, we do realize the pain. The main areas is the companies, especially the enterprise organizations who started early and had set up their end-to-end security operations, had almost ticked every box for every security requirement. But someone who might have done it 5 years, 10 years down before today. So where do they stand today? Is they have a huge setup which is on-prem, and now since they have a cloud-first strategy, and with times the organizations are changing, and now a lot of companies are having the digital cloud transformation plans, and they are changing their strategy to cloud-first strategy. So that's where they are also evaluating and looking into various options of taking their SOC and other security devices and tools to the cloud as well. And that's where some of the challenges that we really notice on a day-to-day basis, especially with on-prem security setup, is one is of course the limited scalability, and if I cover 2 points together, the storage and compute the requirement for storage and compute that you need when you are evaluating an incident. So that's very important, because if you realize if you analyze the enterprise SOCs, the organizations who have built SOCs, they typically have dozens of security products, okay, which are generating large amount of volumes. And a lot of these products might be installed. For example, one is operating in APAC data center, one is you might have a processing server in APAC, one can be in Europe, and the storage, the log storage, the data storage, and everything happens in the respective regions, respective data centers, DR sites, and all whatnot. Also, when they operate in isolation, you really need people, you need manpower to look into each of them, the data that is being generated by each of them, and hunt for any anomalies or hunt for any threat. Uh, you need you need some data to enrich or evaluate your incident so that it's not a false positive, for example. So there's a lot of manual effort also that goes into the picture. Also, if you take a step back and look into this architecture, at a point it seems like the legacy sims or the on-prem sims, and the way it was structured originally, they have started functioning more of a log aggregator, where they collect logs from different region, bring it to a point, and you can analyze a lot of stuff. And if you need to hunt down any historical data, you need to go in the respective log storage. So that adds on to the infrastructure cost as well, where uh, you really need to maintain provision, first of all provision, and then maintain that infrastructure on a day-to-day basis. Also, one of the important thing is you need to commit to a lot of these. Like for example, you need to commit how much storage you will be needing for the upcoming year or upcoming 2 or 3 years. You need to commit, at least calculate, estimate, and then commit the log volume you estimate in the next 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years. So there's a lot of capex investment, or a lot of pre-investments that are required, and then you need to commit to it as well. So this was the on-prem challenges that we generally see. Now the second scenario that we see is uh, not much different, but it's like we have taken over the same which was hosted on-prem, and now we have hosted it in the cloud. Honestly, yes, it solves few of the initial problems, but it remains the same. At the end of the day, what we are doing is we are provisioning a VM. Again, we need to calculate what sizing we need, what's the CPU, what's the core we need, what's the RAM we need, what's the storage devices we need to put in each of these VMs, and then install the respective softwares everywhere. And then if I am also building a log storage separately for each regions, and then we have to get into nitty-gritties of all that. Now, along with sizing, again, we need to commit on basically commit for the year of whatever log volume we are going to ingest or whatever licensing we are going to use. And also we will be able to, you can say, provision, uh, purchase, and make all the infra ready basically for all this setup to run. So this is, you can say, this is one of the model which solves few things, because okay, you are taking the software on the cloud, so that the advantage is, of course, people can access it from respective locations. It becomes more of a SaaS tool kind of a setup, but provisioning, maintenance, forecasting, and all those things remain the same. And for example, if you are evaluating new incident, or if you have a new technology that comes into picture, you need to calculate, you need to do the same exercise that you always do. Basically, you need to calculate what upscale you require. Similarly, if you are removing some data sources from your scope, you need to calculate how much downsizing you might need. So there's few of the challenges that are passed on from on-prem to this model, although it solves few things. But yeah, few of the I would say a major of the challenges are still passed on. Now the next best thing is going cloud native setup, and I would take this opportunity, maybe if you can cover that.
Sure, thanks, Aman, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. So we learned about how the evolution of a cloud native SIM and on-premises to cloud-based security analytics. But when we move to the cloud native security analytics, a lot of things actually changes, and it also helps you in a lot of different ways. First of all, there's no underlying fabric of infrastructure that you need to manage. It runs as a SaaS service in most of the scenarios, which means that the underlying compute and memory you don't have to worry about. There's no need for you to calculate or size based on the logs that you're ingesting, based on the EPS that you're bringing in. You don't have to worry about the compute. You don't have to worry about the memory or any of those things. Because of the cloud native infrastructure architecture, it allows you to focus on your security analytics and threat hunting rather than maintaining the infrastructure of the servers, the storage, the underlying networking, and making sure those components are intact and you have a proper backup and disaster recovery and some of those assets. So there's no need to do any of those stuff with cloud native security analytics. In addition to that, you know, because it's a SaaS service, and most often or not, you don't have to worry about. You don't have to wait for a new features and new capabilities to come and wait for them to deploy in your environment. We all know how attackers are rapidly evolving their techniques, the way they attacks, and of course, the modern techniques and modern attacks are now getting even more modern as we go by. A lot of our defender tools don't really go with the same level of innovation all the time, and when it is precise, when it's running on premise and or when it's running in a contained environment that you have to manage, and it requires a lot of, and it also involves a lot of complexity in terms of developing, in terms of rolling out those updates and changes. Having a cloud native security analytics allows you to maintain a hygiene in terms of getting access to new capabilities of threat detection, new access to new capabilities in terms of how a new data sources can be ingested, and of course new capabilities of in doing investigation and remediation at par, and more frequently than running it on a virtual machine or an on-premises environment. So you get access to latest and greatest all the time without you having to worry about how to deploy and then make the change request and so on. In addition to that, you also get access to the big data platform. As we all know, the data is ever growing. There's no way that data can go less. We have to deal with more data than we were dealing with earlier or the day before and the month before. Having this exponentially changing data set, it's highly impossible for us to do threat hunting on premises with a large set of data set, because that ends up having a lot of compute and memory. And you lose a great insights coming from big data, because you would like the big data capabilities to bring you insights from the data which you have been collecting for last few months. Like, for example, getting insights from how your users behave on a particular day with certain applications, which users are logging on to which applications are different, and they may be different than their peer groups and so on. Now, having this access to this big data and the underlying insights from that data can only happen on the cloud. And you lose that sight when you have this data lying around on your on-premises servers and storage, because you can't run AI-based analytics on top of it. You can't train your machine learning models and so on. Having a data lake on the cloud allows you to bring artificial intelligence on top of it, write your own machine learning model, and helps you detect anomalies which probably are spread across multiple months and multiple years. So you get that capability as well. Also, you can have a completely DevOps based approach even in deployments of various artifacts on your SIM platforms. Like, for example, if you would like to write a new use case, or let's say a new dashboard or new playbook, it can go with the same DevOps processes that you may have already standardized on within your organization, where there will be people who will focus on writing the code, then testing it out, getting the proper approval, running it in the UAT environment, and then pushing it to production. So you can have the same level of CI/CD capabilities available for your deployments of various artifacts of Sentinel or any SIM solutions on the cloud that way. Also, the storage, like I said, the data set is constantly ever growing, constantly increasing. Having to factor in how much how much storage that you would need in a month to come or in a year to come, trust me, it's not feasible anymore, because you can't predict how much data you will generate. You're generating more data than we actually predicted earlier. And having to constantly invest in storage and high quality storage so that you get the best throughput from those storage is kind of lagging behind. And that's where having a elastic storage, where you don't have to worry about how the storage scales automatically whenever there's a new data ingestion that comes in, or the data size is constantly increasing, that gives you great flexibility. So without having to worry about underlying fabric of storage, you can focus primarily on your threat hunting activities and getting insights from your logs, and then make full use of it to making sure that your IT processes, your security processes are in line, and not making things easier for an attacker. Now, in the next segment, we're going to talk about some of these things in more details. Over to you, Howard.
Yeah, so I think that there's obviously this underlying infrastructure and fabric that Ifti spoke about. At the end of the day, the question we really have to ask is, how can I leverage this new technologies, new infrastructure to actually create faster detection and faster response, and also at a price that makes sense. So we're going to go in more detail around what a cloud native SIM and basically what are the benefits and how does that fit into a security operation paradigm. So let's back to you, Nifty. You want to take us through this slide? It's really kind of diving a little bit deeper into the Azure Sentinel solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So Azure Sentinel is Microsoft's security operations platform, which allows organizations to perform the entire SecOps processes on the platform itself. And it's not just a SIM, of course, it's much more than that. And we'll talk about that in a while. First of all, it gives you visibility of various type of threats which are prevailing in the organization based on various data points, and of course based on various logs that you are ingesting from. It's not focused while it's running as a SaaS service on cloud. It's not really focused only on the cloud assets. Of course, it can understand a cloud asset and it can bring cloud to cloud connectivity to those logs ingestions as well. However, you can bring logs from your on-premises sources as well, and then having everything in one single place, so that it gives you great visibility in terms of what's happening with those log sources, and if there are any anomalies as part of those logs. It allows you to create various types of use cases, which allows you to detect threats from the various attributes that those logs exhibits, and then correlate that with the different type of logs in your organization, and then make sure that you are not involved in any sort of multi-stage attacks. So the analytics gives you ways of doing that. Now, one of the great capability here is that the analytics are not just static rules that you used to creating in an on-premises SIM. They are more focused on artificial intelligence-based analytics, which allows the detection of threats without you writing any static rules. And there's a lot of focus that's currently being worked upon there. Then it comes to hunting as part of your regular proactive threat hunting process, where you can do a lot of threat hunting proactively to detect certain anomalies in your organization, which could potentially lead to a breach or compromise at a later stage of time. And that on-demand hunting, Sentinel becomes a great way of platform to provide that on-demand hunting capabilities. It allows you to create those incidents and not just understand what those incidents are, but also allows you to even investigate them in that panel itself, and getting more insights from other data points like UEBA and threat intelligence and so on. So, for example, if you're investigating a particular incident which involves a particular user and maybe an IP address, you also get insights coming from UEBA that what this user has been doing over the past few days or few months, and if there are any anomalies in their behaviors. For example, you're investigating an investigation where this user is coming out from a brand new IP address where they have they've never logged on before, but suddenly the UEB insights also gives you some additional view that this user has also been doing some additional applications and resources which is not as part of their peer group. None of the team members in the same peer group have access to this application and dealing with this set of IP addresses or host names. So you get various insights from the enrichment perspective, and also respond. So it also allows you to not just detect threats and investigate, but also respond to those threats, building various type of automation of your entire security practices, like automation of your notification system, automation of approval system, automation of even remediations, like, for example, blocking a user, blocking an IP address on a firewall, and so on. So you can see that how Azure Sentinel, while it's a cloud native SIM, allows you to basically cover the entire cycle of the entire security operations. Now, what are some of the advantages? First of all, it automatically scale up and down. You don't have to worry about CPU and memory and storage anymore. There's no need to factor in it as part of your sizing process. You can collect logs from various type of data sources, both on premises as well as on cloud, and so on. There's no need for your cloud data sources to send logs to your on-premises setup or infrastructure first, and then you push it back to the cloud on Azure Sentinel. Sentinel can do a direct cloud-to-cloud connectivity and bring those logs directly in. And as a Microsoft customer, if you have been running Microsoft services like Office 365 or other Microsoft threat detection tools like Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office, you get to bring their alerts and their logs free into Azure Sentinel without paying for any ingestion. And it understands some additional capabilities. It allows you to have the CI/CD framework or DevOps frame-based deployments as well for various artifacts of Sentinel, including the analytic rules, including dashboards and playbooks and so on. It's highly distributed, which means that you can still keep the data in the region where you really like to have that logs. For example, if you are bound by certain compliance frameworks or certain regulatory frameworks that this data should not go beyond a certain geographical environments or geographical regions, you can keep the data in data center in Azure and still be able to manage them through a single console, which could be you have multiple data sets in two different data centers in different part of the world and still be able to see them together in one single console. And the entire schema is cloud native, which means that it does not require you to manage and maintain any of the underlying fabric at all. So this allows you to see, it basically gives you this glimpse that the entire security operations platform running on the cloud without you taking care of any underlying fabric, and you focus only on your threat hunting and threat investigations. And that's, I think, one of the key requirements for most of our SOC teams, because most of our SOC teams are spending way too much time on the maintaining and managing the underlying infrastructure. And I think now they can focus primarily on their core priorities like threat hunting and investigation and remediation. Let's go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe thanks, Ifti, but it's always good to hear, you can say, the capabilities of the tool and what the tool can do. Of course, it gives power to us on a lot of capabilities. But maybe let me take the opportunity to explain what are the points, like how all these capabilities, what Ifti just covered about Sentinel. If me and my team, we are implementing that tool and providing 24/7 security operation services for any enterprise customers or any customer around the globe, how does it really benefit us and the customer? So let me share a few points from the service side of it. So first is, of course, the cloud native architecture. I think we have spoken enough, but in simple words, something that is born in the cloud. So it's born in the cloud, it stays in the cloud, expands, contracts, it can do everything in the cloud. It has all the option of all latest technologies available, scalability, and all those stuff. On the other hand, it also contributes to rapid integration and updates. Like, because of this cloud native nature, now we don't need to install update on our SIM. We don't need to install update on our OS. We don't need to install any kind of updates of whatever Microsoft is providing, for example, because we get everything as part of the service. So I don't have to waste my energy, my resources, and my time on doing everything that I just mentioned. Uh, Another thing that goes hand in hand with that is there's no infrastructure on maintenance. Again, there's no infra required. I don't have to calculate how much rack storage I need, how much RAMs I need, how many CPU storage. I don't need anything. All I need is, okay, the logs are coming in. I can build a security data lake that can upscale, downscale, like just a click of a button. I don't even have to do anything about it. Neither I have to maintain it. Uh, the other benefits are, first is the cloud native integrations. All major integrations are available just on a click of a button. I can integrate any Azure service, any Microsoft service, any other services apart from Microsoft and Azure, the native integrators that are already available. We talk about Azure, so we think that, okay, this is Azure focused, but no, if I need to bring in my AWS data, if I need to bring in my on-prem data, my firewalls, my Palo Altos, whatever, FortiGates, whatever data sources that I have. There are a lot of data connectors that are available out of the box. And I just need to click a button and it's all done for me. So it's really the time to value, the time to output is very, very quick. The next thing is pay as you use. So that's the best thing. For example, if I am implementing two solutions, just giving an example, one is on-prem and one is cloud native. Now I might have like 50 firewalls, 50 servers, and 50 devices. Just an example. In the on-prem setup or in a dedicated capacity setup where I'm even hosting on cloud, for example, but I need to commit to whatever log volume this 150 things will give me at the end of the day. Although I might upload firewalls first because that's my perimeter and I want to do that fast, and maybe it's my critical asset, and that's why. And I might do others later. But when it comes to cloud native, especially Sentinel, I can do in whatever order I want. Like, for example, in first month, if I onboard only firewall, I'm consuming X volume, I pay only for X. I don't pay for what's coming in the future, although I had already planned for it. So it's pay as you use. If you keep increasing, it will keep increasing. If you optimize, you decrease, it will keep decreasing. So that's the best thing. The other thing is automation tool. So there are a lot of automation tools that are available. For example, in Sentinel, there are ARM templates, Azure CLI, PowerShell, REST API, Terraform, Bicep. There are lots of resources that are available, using which we can automate majority of our activities, and we are able to save time and respond, detect quickly and respond faster. Next is, so this is one important point, and if they did touch upon it during the last slide, Sentinel is cloud native, right? It's born in the cloud, so it's same as a code. Okay, It's same as a code. Sentinel allows you to apply this infrastructure as a code and DevOps practice in order to accelerate any infrastructure or any content development that you want to do. You can manage everything as a code. You can bring in, you can develop parsers, dockers, whatever you want, and you can uh, just apply it. And it also helps with continuous deployment, because moving to cloud and using cloud native infra, it introduces a lot of DevOps processes, right? So when we use Sentinel, it allows us to do a lot of things automatically because we can control it as a code. We can just create that codes, that processes, and everything can trigger it from the portal, and it's all done. So it brings in a lot of automation, a lot of efficiency, and we can control it just like we can control and write a code. And lastly, there is, it's not only SIM, it's not only, of course, detection, machine learning, response, ability to automate, everything is there what a SIM can do, but it also brings a lot of things. The first is UEBA. You don't have to buy a separate UEBA, so that, at least for us, it is very convenient. You have the same data set. We can evaluate what a user and or what a entity behavior is. We can highlight some high risky users, entities, and all that, and that makes our life very easy. It also has a big defender suite, although I think the defender word we didn't mention, but yeah, it has the defender suite. You have identity, and you can get your endpoints, cloud security, app security, everything at one place. O365, everything boils down to one single place, and you can control all the things which you might have ended up putting a tool for each and every aspect. You can control. One important thing and the new thing as well is the OT space. If enterprise customers who also has exposure to OT, they have maybe manufacturing sites, ports, treatment plants, and all that, they can use Defender for OT. They can analyze the data, of course, layer 3 and below. They can see what the operational processes and the anomalies and the behavior patterns of layer 3 and below, and they can analyze, bring it up to Sentinel itself. So that's one of the key things. And talking about SecOps, so all these things that I mentioned ultimately boils down, and you can control the entire end-to-end assembly line of the security operations for one single place. And maybe we can visualize and explain that in the next slide. Ifti, maybe you can do it.
Absolutely. So Sentinel is basically part of an entire ecosystem of Microsoft threat protection solution, starting in the identity layer of things where we have Azure Active Directory and Azure Active Directory Plan 2, and then Active Directory running on your premises with ADFS servers and so on. So you can basically bring logs from your identity solutions, including Active Directory and Azure Active Directory. Then comes your devices, and that is where a lot of threats are. And devices means the endpoints, the endpoint servers, which basically creates a lot of proves a lot of playground for the attacker, and a lot of telemetry and a lot of insights from these devices are critical to detect multi-stage attacks, and that is where a lot of logs, which can be collected from the endpoints. And then from your productivity suites like Office 365, you have third-party productivity suites, you can bring them as well. You may be using third-party cloud SaaS offerings like Salesforce.com, SuccessFactors, Concur, and so on. So you can bring their logs as well. And then your on-premise servers, your data, so data which is lying on premises, the way it is being handled, the way it is being used. You would like to also get some insights there as well. Now, other solutions from Microsoft, which basically brings a lot of value and a lot of threat detection on these solutions, like in the form of Microsoft Identity, threat protection, which is a Azure AD capabilities, then Microsoft Defender for Identity, which allows detections of threats on an Active Directory solution, on Active Directory part of things, the Microsoft Cloud App Security, which basically does threat detections and anomaly detections on the public cloud applications that you may be using, integrated with Azure AD. And then capabilities like Defender for Endpoint, which is basically an EDR and endpoint protection solution which detects threats on your endpoints directly, and then also helps you remediate them. And then you can take those telemetry, take those alerts, and then bring it to Sentinel for further correlations. and then your Azure Security Center or Azure Defender, what we call, which allows you to do threat detections across your Azure assets and all the applications and services which are running on Azure. You can detect those threats directly using Azure Defender and Azure Security Center, and then bring everything into Sentinel for even larger correlations. Now, it's perfectly. You may also have some additional assets in your digital estate, like for example, your firewall, your IDS, IPS systems. You maybe your cloud proxy and your privileged identity management solution, and so on. And at some point of time, you would also like to do some correlations there. So having Microsoft threat detection solutions in the form of Defender for Identity, Defender for Endpoint, Azure Defender, Cloud App Security, you can monitor a lot of aspects of your digital estate from there, and then bring them to Sentinel to do further correlations with the rest of the digital estate. So in a way, you basically get an extended threat detection response where you can not just see what's happening in just one single digital area, but you also basically can see if there are any multi-stage attacks which are moving from one assets to another. Maybe an initial compromise which may have started from your email as a phishing link, or maybe a malware intrusion in the form of an attachment, and then it is doing after compromising an endpoint, it is doing lateral movements by compromising an identity, and maybe looking out for your high value assets like your file servers, your domain controllers, your exchange servers, and so on. Now, having this level of visibility by bringing various types of logs and various types of high rich fidelity incidents from Microsoft detections, from threat detection solutions like these, you basically make sure that you are not looking at individual alerts and anomaly. You're looking at high fidelity end-to-end incidents, which allows our security analysts to investigate faster and come to a conclusion, that this is a false positive and true positive in a much better way and more efficient ways, and then take remediation action on top of it. So now let's move forward and let's talk about some of these things in details. So this is how the entire architecture looks like. So we just spread it across as a bottom layer where you bring your individual workloads logs, but also your compliance and governance assets as well. Like for example, your identity, your devices, your IaaS, which is running on cloud, and other aspects of your productivity like OneDrive and so on. When you bring it to Sentinel, you can use various capabilities of Sentinel to do various type of analysis. Like for example, you can use the data to do alert generation and incident generation. You can also use the built-in machine learning and AI to do threat detections by doing correlations of what's happening on the device with what's happening on identity. So for example, if there's a new user who has logged on from an IP address where they have never logged on before, this event can be correlated with, let's say this user is also working on a particular device and this particular device has a malware intrusion on it. So when you correlate these two events, you might see that there's a pattern to it, and it's not it's not just one odd incident. And you can use ML and built-in AI to do some of those threat detections. The UEBA capability of Sentinel allows you to bring various insights about the user, the host name, the network IP address, and so on by looking at various other data points and see if these entities are behaving anomalously, if there are certain things which are not based on patterns or baselines, and you can detect some of those things using the UEBA capabilities. Of course, the data connectors, which allows you to do these integrations in a click of a button. You can bring them these data sources, which gives you immediate value of running Sentinel. And the capabilities on top of it, like having to run various hunting queries to do proactive threat hunting, and then build various type of dashboards for your operations requirement, your insights analysis, and of course your dashboarding. You can use the workbooks capability of Sentinel. Now, all these capabilities rolls up to your SOC teams, and how your SOC teams are going to leverage them in the level 1, level 2, and level 3. That's we're going to talk about now, and I'll let Aman talk about that.
Thanks, Ifti. So one important thing to be careful, or you can say to take a note of, is, of course, we get infinite scaling option. We get all this nice things that Ifti just mentioned. For example, machine learning capability to analyze tons of data together, onboard everything with just a click of a button. With So with all this power, it's very important that, of course, what we should do and what we should not do. So that becomes important. It's also, you can say, if we onboard everything that we have and we bring everything, all the data inside, so that also does not solve the problem. Although yes, we can monitor everything, we will do that, but there's a smart way of doing that as well, and that's where cyberproof can really help. So typically what we see is that all organizations, what they will do is, first, of course, what log sources do I have? That's the first question they will ask. Once they have the list of log sources that are available, how can I integrate it to Sentinel? Majority of them will be anyway available. The integrations and the native connectors will be available. So you just go to the portal, Sentinel portal, click on a button, and you get majority of them onboarded. Whatever one or two is not available or it's very niche or anything, you can get it via other processes. Now that is done, then which technology integrations do I need over and above that? And what processes can I use to manage these alerts and incident? So this is the typical process that we see when we discuss the setting up Sentinel and setting up processes and all the basically the end-to-end process for incident management and thing. Now, the drawback of following this process is, of course, you get everything inside, non-security alerts, information logs, everything, and there's too much noise. Okay, there's no prioritization. You have onboarded everything, so there's no, you can say, no whiteboarding sessions or no thinking. Okay, these are my critical assets. These are the assets that are most possesses the most risk to my business, and all those categorizations that should be done. We are trying to monitor each and everything instead of just categorizing the main assets and prioritizing, or you can say focusing on the main threats. That's one thing. And what we do is, of course, Sentinel might give you whatever 400, 500, 600, lots and lots of detection rules, use cases, and lots of things which are available out of the box or on GitHub or wherever. But just taking it up and deploying everything also does not make sense. It's always a good practice to evaluate what you need, prioritize the agile framework, maybe a risk-based approach on what I need, and then approach these steps. So how cyberproof helps with all this, or how we generally approach it, is what I will cover in the next slide. So what we generally do is, first, of course, what are what are my assets that I need to protect? Okay, which type of attacks do I need to monitor? What's my threat profile? Okay, what industry do I belong to? What's the trends going on? What's my critical data assets? Okay, data is more important to me, or customer information is more important to me. My IPs are more important to me. Which type of industry I am in? Am I e-commerce? The application is more important to me. That's the most critical assets. My apps are more important. So we really need to categorize all that, and then we need to follow some industry best practice to identify the detection gaps. We can visualize some kill chain attacks. One of the, you can say, most common practice that we use is mapping it to Mitre attack framework. We will identify all tactics, all techniques, all permutation combination of possible attacks, possible ways, possible tools that an attacker can use to exploit each and every box. Okay, assuming, okay, this box or this path is open. Okay, what's the possibility that can be exploited? So all those permutation combinations are covered, and we ensure all those gaps are ticked in by ensuring we have some provision, some detection mechanism in place, so that whenever it happens or whenever that techniques trigger, we know what's happening. Then the next question is, okay, I am getting my detection site sorted. Okay, I will, since I have a detection rule, my detection site is sorted, I will get an alert. Getting an alert does not solve my problem. The problem is what I can and how quickly I can take an action on that alert. Okay, so that's why we need to build a playbook. It can be a manual playbook, just the steps what I need to do. For example, I just very simple simple example. If I get an alert, okay, this person, maybe Howard, there's multiple failed logins from his account. It can be as simple as that: enforce a password change. Very simple. Okay. We can of course confirm with the user. There are multiple scenarios and steps that different companies follow, but the main thing is defining your response procedure for every alert, every detection rule you might have defined, and then of course identifying which playbooks you can automate and which you want to keep it manual. And then once you build all these use cases, you need to maintain it. Okay, you need to update it. If your data sources change, or if you bring in more data sources, you need to enrich the use cases and you need to continuously update it. So what we do, especially in CyberProof, is we have a we have a concept called the use case factory, more like an industrial process where we have built this agile framework. So what we do is, the first is the threat scenario. We will define the threat scenario, what the scenario is. We will identify, of course, during onboarding, we would have built the threat profile. We would have built the risk profile of the organization. But then there can be different inputs that comes into or which triggers a use case request, or the team identifies the need for a use case. One, I will cover the last one first because that's what we were talking about. The first one is, of course, what we discussed, the Mitre attack framework. When you yourself identify, you run simulations, you identify any gaps, any permutation combination that might exist. There can be other things. One, it can be customer driven as well. If nobody knows the business better than the customer, right? So if the customer thinks or classifies some assets as critical assets, and we need to ensure that we have enough protection built around it, so of course we will do that. The second is, it can be threat intel based. For example, Log4j was recent one. We had SolarWinds there. Every now and then you keep hearing of critical vulnerabilities or critical alerts being circulated in the market. So once that is detected and the threat intel team immediately notifies each and every SOC team, that can be one of the trigger that you go back, evaluate what use cases you have, assuming it will come and hit our data set as well. So we will ensure what we have, we will go back. If we don't have, we will pull the crank again. We will design and develop and test it out and deploy it as well. The third can be, it can be an input from the SOC team. The SOC team basically is monitoring 24/7 everything that's going on into the organization, all logs, all activity, everything. So they see patterns. Okay, they know month on month which use cases are being triggered, what are the gaps, what kind of new incidents, new vulnerabilities they are encountering, and they might need a playbook, they might need a detection rule, they might need to update a detection rule as well. So there are a lot of inputs that comes from the SOC team as well. And given all these scenarios, or given all these inputs that we get, what we do is we have a use case forum where we identify all the needs, all the attack scenarios and everything, document it, and then move it to the factory team. Factory team, what it does, it designs the use case, define all the data sources, all the integrations required, all to first get the data in, and second maybe trigger automation as well, build the detection rule, build the playbook, test it out, and once we have tested out, deploy it, and then ensure that it triggers alerts, and just test out that the entire cycle is getting run. Once this is done, we have a use case catalog where we add the use case to. Now this we could have for example, this we could have created on a request of one of the BFSI customer, for example, in India. But since the use case is now available, we add it to the catalog, and it can be available to all the customers around the globe, irrespective of the industry or the type of customer. And of course, that feedback goes to the stock as well. So this is how, what we do is, of course, the data that comes in, the data sources and everything. But what we do is we follow a risk-based approach where we prioritize your assets first, your threat profile first, the threat scenarios that your company is facing, and given all that, come up with the best suited detection rules and playbooks, which we call use case, so that we ensure that every possible permutation combination of attack scenario can be covered, and the best coverage can be provided to an organization. Yeah. So sorry, back to you, Howard.
Yeah, I think actually I'm gonna pass this over to Nifty to talk about some of the advanced analytics that inherent in the system. Do you want to take this, Nifty?
Yeah. So one of the great capability of Sentinel, as compared to other traditional SIEMs that we have used before, where we actually had to write threat detection rules for anything and everything, and that quite becomes a challenge a lot of times, because we are not able to write as many detection rules as attackers are leveraging to evade, because most of the attacks does not follow any static patterns anymore, and that is where a lot of these detections has to come from the machine learning. And Sentinel is kind of a great combination of the machine learning based detection, and of course the traditional use case or traditional static detections as well, where the the creativity or the hunting skills of a human analyst comes to life. But beyond that, of course, there are a lot of detections, like close to 120 different type of threat detection, which can be done within Sentinel without you writing any static rules at all. And it goes even beyond these 120 detections when we include UEBA and other anomalies that we have in Sentinel, which can detect threats, anomalies, the way somebody is RDPing into a system, somebody is doing SSH connection to a machine, and so on. So the great thing about it is that you turn it on, you start ingesting the data, and this data will automatically start getting matched against threat intelligence, and the machine learning automatically start detecting threats based on various signals from various type of data sources that you have as part of your capability, or as part of your Sentinel console itself. So this gives you a great capability for organizations who are short in terms of the number of people that they have to look at active alerts and then investigate and remediate. This brings down the load on those individuals to a great extent, because most of these detections comes automatically without you writing any static rules. So that's a great capability to have, to be honest. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so I think just kind of wrapping up and kind of bringing it all together. Let's look at a couple of kind of practical considerations. Obviously, transition takes time, and I think let's kind of look at how we make that transition from kind of on-premise type of architecture into, or a legacy architecture into a hybrid. So let's move to here. Aman, do you want to cover this in the
Yeah,
next slide?
yeah, sure. So what we have generally noticed is, while speaking to a lot of customers, what they say is, okay, we already have a security operation center in place. We have invested in a same setup on-prem or maybe hosted on cloud, but yeah, everything is set up. They even might have a EDR, threat intel, vulnerability, all those technology and tools addressing the necessary areas as well. So generally, there are different scenarios generally that we see. Some customers who really want to try out and test the flavor of the cloud native piece as well. So what they start is, what we have noticed is, they will go and they will adopt Sentinel and maybe the other functionalities, for example, Defender for endpoint to address endpoints, or Defender suite, or maybe O365 and other functionalities. So they will go, they will pick up their Microsoft services, they will pick up their Azure tenant if available, all those things, and they will start using Sentinel. So one good advantage is Sentinel. You can ingest your Azure and Microsoft services very easily, and I think most of them are free of charge. So what they do is, they can start with all these Azure and Microsoft services. They can start adopting that, and then slowly move the legacy SIEM operations and bring in the data sources from legacy SIEM to Sentinel. Now, so there can be different scenarios, but where you can say we can add value, or CyberProof can add value and can help as well, or have helped in the past, as we, as part of the service, we have something called the CDC platform, which is the orchestration and automation platform. But the most, you can say, important thing is, it what it can do is it can provide one single layer for both the SIMs. It can act as a single pane of glass for what's going on, for example, in your on-prem side or on your cloud side of things as well. And then you can monitor. So how this is help is when tomorrow you plan to take data sources and slowly transition your data sources from on-prem to your Sentinel, it does not affect your the SOC team doesn't have to every day come and decide or find out okay which data source is where or which transition is taking place in which order. What they do is they monitor the CDC platform for all the alerts coming in. The important point is, for example, if there's just an example, AWS and some servers on-prem, we have moved it to Sentinel now. It goes to CDC, so the alerts keep going to CDC. It acts as a one single uh, point of control for all the alerts. And below that, the detection layer, we can slowly help transition all these data sources from the legacy SIM to Sentinel SIM. Also, one thing that we can do is we can build a log collection and a normalization layer. So in some of the cases, what happens is, for example, we need to collect data from a lot of security tools, security technologies which are not that common, and data connectors and sources might not be available. So what we do is we collect everything at one single place, uh, and we normalize data, parse data, and we can store it in a security data lake. And the data lake can be Azure Blob Storage or Azure Data Explorer, for example. We store everything there, and you might be getting, for example, you're bringing in 500 GB per day, and then we can apply filters. We can filter out non-security data, and what you feed into the same is actually more optimized and more important data which is going on. So we can also help with cost reduction and optimization of data as well. And if you move to the next slide, Howard, so and then ultimately what we plan to achieve is once we have transitioned the uh, full data sources from the legacy SIM to Azure Sentinel, then we can operate as one single big suite. So for example, you have your Sentinel running, you have your entire Defender suite running. For example, you have your the end-to-end Defender suite running, so it gives you that XDR capabilities as well. You have your identity and compliance things checked in. You have your policies and monitoring in place. You have your identity. You get everything in one place. We bring in the use case management, the use case factory approach that we talked about. We keep the CDC on top, and then we have the SOC team that can monitor end to end and provide you both the monitoring response capabilities like threat intel, threat hunting, writing KQL queries, building the security data lake if your data, of course, is exceeding too much. So we can build that security data lake and manage it for you as well. So this is like a target architecture.
Yeah, so thank you both for that. It was great journey, understanding what's needed and really peeling under the surface there. We are almost out of time, and we did get a question, or kind of two questions. So maybe I'll read the question, and maybe you can both give your view on this. So. So the question was, how do we utilize collected log sources for threat hunting, for example, for threat hunting in any SIM platform? And the second question is, what are the essential data sources which we need to look at while looking for threats in the customer environment? So,
I'll
Tif,
probably
do you want
start
to?
with yeah. So I'll probably answer the second question first, because the more different insights you can bring from various vectors is going to be important. Like, for example, you should have, and we covered this one is one of the slides, that you should have a visibility of what's happening on your identity side of things. So that's where the Active Directory and Azure AD data comes into picture. What's happening on your endpoints and servers, and what are things which are happening on your network side of things. If you can get at least started with these three data sites, that gives you a great visibility if there are any multi-stage attacks which are involved there. And on top of that, you can always bring more data sources like your cloud applications that you may be using, your emails channels, your productivity suites, and so on. But yes, identity, endpoints, your servers, and your networks, these are some more things that I would start from.
Aman?
Yeah, just to add, I agree. I agree. The basic in the service provider space, what we say is, okay, what's the data? What's the critical data you have? How do you want to protect it? Second, what's the perimeter? How data is coming in? Where data is storing? So what's the control? And of course, where data is going out. So all these controls are mostly classified as critical. Of course, it depends from an organization to organization and industry to industry, but that's like how you decide the basic stuff. And then the technologies that Ifti mentioned, you can just identify and list that down, onboard them first, and then move to the other ones. Also, a note on threat hunting. So what happens is, of course, for example, if you have Sentinel and you have an alert coming in, so there's a lot of enrichment that happens, a lot of information which is attached to it. For example, you get information from CMDB, you get information from your EDR, for example, what's the hash values, what's the machine, you get the identity from Azure Active Directory. So there's a lot of data you get. Still, the raw data is available in Sentinel. So what the analyst can do is they can go, he or she can go, analyze the raw data, look for any detail that might have been missed by the tool, or the tool, the information that the tool thought is important and they have attached, whether they think. That's where manual intervention in decision making comes into picture, and that's where that threat hunting element, that manual hunting, manual investigation really helps, so that you can validate what the tool is giving you, and then either you validate or you add more details. So that's where threat hunting helps.
Okay. Any final comments before we wrap it up for today? Ifti, anything else you want to add?
I would suggest, yeah, get started with at least, the free data sources that doesn't cost you anything, and see, the whole scenario, whole experience of how you can do threat hunting and get the results of your threat hunting within matter of seconds and minutes, and then try to compare this with how you used to do certain things in on-premises. And then when you see, how easy it is to do threat hunting on cloud, you will, trust me, you will fall in love with doing this, in more efficient way than what you're doing today. And yeah, and then maybe pick up small assets and start working from there. I think that will give you a great view in terms of how to scale this up and use this as your primary SOC platform.
Cool. Okay, so really appreciate the time. It was very informative. Thank you to Ifti and Aman. If anyone wants to reach out to you, I'm sure please do that via LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. And thank you for everybody for participating today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you.